welcome. Let's take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for gathering you at that unusual hour. Today we are going to talk about the art of data fetching, which I think is quite crucial. If I ask you who is not fetching any data in your application, I guess there is no person like that. If there is a person like that, here's the doors, because you won't learn anything. But we already had amazing speakers that were talking about data and reactivity. I will try to not talk about it, but we'll kind of approach it more from the UX perspective, UI, and I will try to show you what does it mean to use some patterns that we have, and what does it mean for the user actually. And but first, let me introduce myself. I'm Tomek Niezurawski. I'm a principal engineer at Forest. I came from Poznań, Poland, here. I'm trying to convince people to have Ember Fest in Poland one day. Maybe, I know they are revealing the location, you know, maybe if you see goats next time, maybe it's Poznań, you know. We'll see. I like to say that I connect humans with machines, which is finally I have a UX topic I can talk about. But being very aware that this is like, you are already tired, I know. Yesterday at that time, Mo made you dancing the mosquito dance. And all I know is, I know, Macarena, something like that. So we are not doing that. So instead, I will start in a quite controversial way. You might hate me a bit for a sec. Don't forget that I have like Ember in Herd, and I also have socks with Ember, so I'm really sold to the framework, you know. But you know, stay with me. Just to move your brain, I will start a little bit nasty. So I don't really like the model hook, to be honest. You know, something that is in the roots of Ember, and the reason for that is it's blocking the screen. And of course, it's not fully true. You know, if we are thinking about the model, I think what we expect to return is data. If you think about it, of course you can hack it. I mean, maybe that's not a hack, but it doesn't have to block the screen. Of course, you can return, as Chris said yesterday, it can return a request, for example, right, or task instance from Ember concurrency, and that is not going to block the screen. You will have access to the to some state and then eventually to the data, right? But I think that blocking issue was already recognized by the framework, because there are something, I'm not sure if all of you know about it, but there is something I call sub-broad, sub-states, like loading an error, and we'll look into that. And there is some quite magical behavior that I actually like, that was, I think, deprecated recently. You can pass, when you navigate to some route, you can pass, instead of a primitive value like number or string, that could be an ID, you can pass the object, and you will bypass the model hook. So I built a small application. It's all Mirage, so it's all fake. And I have like a handy slider here. So the delay we have is 1.4 seconds, which is quite a long time for a request, I guess. But if you think about it, maybe it's not like just a ping to Kevin from Australia to Dublin. It should take around 1 second, 1.1 maybe. So that is a good value, and so we will see the effects. But yeah. Anyway, I quite like the quote of Linus Torvalds. He's saying, "Talk is cheap, show me the code," right? Quite cool. And for that UX presentation, I would rather say, "Talk is cheap, show me the moving pixels." So this is going to be a light talk. You will just look at the moving pixels. So let's examine the blocking screen example first. I'm going to click here, and the data loaded. I'm going to tell you when I clicked. Click. Not the best experience, of course, right? So this is something I think we should avoid. And as I said, framework, it looks like framework recognized that issue before. And here I have movies template wrote. I can add something like hyphen loading, the same name, and what I will get is this. Let's go back. That's already something where we can start our journey on the art of data fetching, because we have already some feedback, right, to the user. And it's already better. I mean, kind of nothing wrong with that. If you have impatient user, if they click multiple times on that, it's not going to make it faster, unfortunately, but it's not going to break the app as well. So that's good. But with this feedback, something is already a little bit better. But what we have to look at from UX perspective here is we are waiting for the whole page to load, and actually the data is only here, right? But what if this is just a gateway for the user? They have a task at 20 movies, so every time they go here, they have to wait for the whole screen to load before they click here, right? So we I think, should think about it and give them access to as many interface objects, elements, as it's possible. And as you can see, the input is already auto-focused, so maybe they can start searching earlier than waiting for the whole thing to load, right? So what I would do rather, so how we should load the data, in my opinion, is I would say we should rather load them from components. And this is kind of in alignment, I would say, what other frameworks do. And I'm very aware that what others do doesn't mean that it's good. But in this case, it feels a little bit faster, to me at least. I go here, I can go here straight away, for example, right? So I load the table, I want to add a new movie, and I'm already there. I don't have to pay that price for loading of the whole page. And also, when I want to search for something, I don't have to wait. Of course, there are different cases. Sometimes the table, it doesn't matter what is on the first page, and I just want to search. In the other way, in the other scenario, there could be maybe a table with invoices, and you always have the newest invoice at the top. So you really want to wait for that first page to load, right? So we are loading it now from the component, we can see, and we will start searching. I will search for fight, but that doesn't work. And now let's examine why. As you can see in the URL, probably you see, the binding is working here. So what the heck? If I refresh, it looks like the fetching function has to work as well. But if I remove it from here, that doesn't work. I go here, and it again works. So a common mistake, in my opinion, everything is an opinion, of course, is that it's easy to fall in the trap of fetching data from a constructor. Like, I have some data to show. Whenever it's put into the DOM, so constructor runs, I'm going to fetch these movies. Okay, and it doesn't matter. Here I use I save the data to track properties, but actually it could be different. I could leverage the fact that I use, Ember concurrency, and I can take the value of the last task, whatever. But that is not reactive. And what I actually like to use is reactive web. Yesterday I was a little bit stressed. Do you remember the presentation of Preston? He was showing a lot of libraries with reactive functionality, and was like, put the reactive web at the last, because it was like, say it's okay. Fortunately, he wrote it, so he said it's okay. So I like the API here, as, of course, you will have to fetch some extra dependency, which you may or may not like, but we'll examine that in a second as well. I like the API, like it kind of tells the story. In this context, we have that task, and whenever the dependencies change, in this case, it's a search argument, you will refetch data for me. So that works, and let's see if that works. Forrest Gump, yeah. So it's there, and kind of fetching from a component works. And something I forgot to say, it would be much easier if that input would be a part of the component, right? Because then I would just call the function to refetch the data. But there are different cases, and this is difficult. This is a difficult case, I would say, where the data comes from somewhere else and you would like to refetch. It can happen. So I think this pattern would be a little bit nicer. But also, something I forgot to say about this one. This, in my opinion, is quite dangerous when it comes to constructor fetch, because in most of the cases it's going to work. And those are, when it doesn't depend on the outside world, it's going to just work. So that's tricky to explain later. And technically, if you have some averse to third-party libraries and you don't want to do it, technically you can also make it through a getter. And you have to believe me, the implementation is the same. But what will I search for now? Pulps, and we have Pulp Fiction. So it definitely works, although it raises a question like, probably you heard about the getters. Don't do side effects, right? And in a way, fetching data is a side effect, right? Because after all, we are going to save the data somewhere and use it. So I'm not sure if I would do it this way. Definitely works. And in my opinion, raises also a question, fetching data is always expensive operation. Should I put cached decorator on that? And I would like to avoid answering those questions. That's why I like the API of Reactive Web. So I would recommend probably that. And here we have a kind of mandatory type ahead mention. I don't really care here, to be honest, because I have Mirage. So when I was typing, I created many requests, right? And what we actually probably would like to is protect our resources, right? So there is, of course, documentation in Ember concurrency. I didn't want to make this talk about Ember concurrency because there were talks before about it, and the documentation is great. I really love the animations there. Awesome work, whoever did it. But how that debounce works here is that we are looking for a time window of 250 milliseconds in this case, that I have to stop typing for 250 milliseconds, right, to fire the request. That's the thing. And when I use that debounce, let's open console log, fight. Oh, this time I was a little bit slow, but you get the idea. We'll reduce the number of the requests, right? And something that is unfortunately, I think, not noticed, also the example in the docs is a little bit different, is that we are always paying that little 250 milliseconds time, I would say. So if your request takes 500 milliseconds, the whole interaction for a user will be 750 because they have to stop typing for 250. And it may not look like, but I have Mirage here, so I'm going to remove the delay whatsoever. And everything I said before doesn't matter because blocking screen just loads. Everything is just super fast. But not here. Here it actually loads the data for that 250 milliseconds. It's not much, but it's also adding. Everything I'm showing here is that in an application, it will add to like general feel of the application. And of course, we still want to keep it for typing, but the way we can fix it in a very easy way is that until someone searches, just a single, if I don't know how many characters are here, not a lot, but the initial load doesn't have to pay that price. So here's a little bit improved version. So we can improve the small things here and there as well, which then later sum up to some better UX. Like small choices in our patterns that will make it better. The one thing I would probably, I don't want to say to improve, you will judge yourself because I know there are people who don't like skeletons. I guess this image everyone likes, but some people don't like skeletons, some people prefer spinners, but I'm going to show you something. So let's reset that. And when we go to the loading, we could also do something like this, and we can reserve the space for the data that we want to show. And maybe in the case of the table, it's not that impressive if we compare things. For some, it may feel like it's a little bit faster. For some, not really. But I have also a dashboard example for you. This dashboard works the way that it loads the data from different places. Let's say we are a data company and we show those widgets in different places. So we have individual spinners here and there. And it's quite difficult to reserve a good space for the data to show if you have a spinner. So for example, if you notice here, that information we also have to load because we don't know yet if the sales went up or down. So we put a small spinner there, for example. In cases like that, maybe skeletons are like a better idea that can reduce the shift, the layout shift that we have. And just to compare with the blocking screen example, it can look like this, right? Everything loaded at the same time. I'll tell you again when I click, and it's there, right? So it feels, after all, it's all fake. It all takes the same amount of time, I promise. This feels a little bit faster, in my opinion. Of course, this would be, again, something worth considering, and the skeleton could look like this. So that the data is loaded. Let's maybe do this. Right, so skeletons, I think, are worth trying, maybe. And as you can see, the skeletons, my friends, they help to reduce the so-called cumulative layout shift, or in general, layout shift. But sometimes we could use the layout shift as our ally, and I'm going to show you that. First, we'll see what is the story. So the warning at the top didn't load yet, but we'll load it in a sec. So the alert says, sorry, we messed up. Yesterday, during Emberfest, one of our colleagues got completely drunk and removed some records from the database. Some data might be inaccurate. We will calculate them after Tomek's talk. So I guess, I don't know if it's related to any real message, but it's for sure a mature team put something like this there. Probably they had a P1 or something. So should we we know we want to show it, right? Should we reserve space for that? It can look like this. But that's actually not good because I hope most of the time we don't show this warning, right? So you have to think if you should reserve space for your skeleton or put a spinner. Just because of the fact that you are loading data, it doesn't make you you have to put a spinner somewhere, So the way it could work is this, and this is actually our ally now with the layout shift. So when we load the data, it moves everything down and makes you focus on that part. So that's, in general, I think, a good thing. So in the art of data fetching, there are no strong rules. It's every time I think you should think about the use case you have and use one of our patterns there. And I think you should also be prepared for things that shouldn't happen, I think. Oh, someone is updating software. Nice. No, not this time. Imagine it would all break. Okay, so when it comes to the things that shouldn't happen, again, I will make our Mirage delay a little bit different. It's going to take 5 seconds to load some data, and for that long, the skeleton for sure is something bad. Although I love UX, I'm not the best designer, so it could look a little bit better. But if something takes a lot of time, we can actually tell the users that, oops, hold on, it takes longer than usual. And this way, we can put our interface on a kind of next level, because the best interfaces, in my opinion, they communicate about the state, what is happening, and let you recover from some situation. And you may think, maybe that's not that important. And maybe it's not. This is a real request we have, like a distribution of the time it takes. 95%, P95, it's, let's say, around 400 milliseconds. So this warning that I'm showing after 3 seconds is never going to show up. But P998, actually, for some people, for someone it took 1 minute, I guess, the browser made a timeout at 30 seconds. So there was an error. But some people actually will experience some weird stuff. And, well, maybe you could be prepared for stuff like that. And this is like a very simple implementation. It's not the best implementation for sure, so don't screenshot that, because you should rather look at the time in a high precision time, I would say. Here I'm just counting the milliseconds that passed. Every time I want to make a request, I start the tick. So this thing. And it's, through set interval, it just checks if, 3 seconds passed. Yes, show the warning. So, but only this implementation I was able to fit on the screen. So now when we were in the area of warnings, maybe we could go to the area of bad things. So again, our classic behavior would be, we go to our dashboard. Forgot to reset the time. It's 5 seconds. We are not going to take wait that long. So, as I mentioned, we have the loading subroute and also error. So we could handle this way. It's already better than nothing, right? Better than empty screen. But again, I think we could handle that locally. Actually, only one request there failed, sales by category. But you can imagine by showing this, maybe they are not interested about it, or maybe just last 7 days endpoint is not working for some reason, right? So maybe they can choose something else, and maybe, as I said, maybe they don't care. Maybe they care about something else, and they have a usable page here. But they can also locally click retry, and this time the data loaded. So again, I think fetching data closer to where you show the data, so in the components, might be an interesting idea. Of course, I'm not telling you what to do, neither with your Ember apps or Live, but but it's worth considering, I would say. So yeah, with our premise to load data in small areas, I would say offer a way to retry, which we also have seen on the lightning talk, which was great. But yeah, so far we were tricking everyone. As I said, everything was a trick. It just felt faster. If it felt faster for you, for some reasons, it was all a trick, because this takes everything takes the same time here, actually. But let's change that. Let's actually make things faster, and we are not going to the backend, but I have a special button here. You should add a button like that as well. But yeah, maybe in a sec. Let's first take a look. I'm going to demo this and would like to learn more about director David Fincher. So I go here, I click, it loads. Could be, skeleton, could be the spinner, but it takes some time. I mean, we know what time it takes, 1.4 second, right? Okay, now let's make it faster. It'll load it faster. Just add this button, I recommend it. So if you didn't notice actually what happened, I added that, I added the video. I tried really, really hard to put the same frames left and the right. I'm going to click that thing again, on the video, and we'll start fetching data and counting time. don't remember what I used for that recording, probably something around 2 seconds. So it loaded faster. The question is why it loaded faster, and maybe I still have the answer in console logs. I was actually measuring something here. I was measuring the time between I hovered the link and I clicked. So I started loading data on the hover, and when I clicked, already 1 second passed. So I was already loading data for 1 second, and what you have seen here was the missing 400 milliseconds of loading, which felt way faster because 1 minute already passed between my hover and my click, and I don't feel like I was any particularly slow, but let's examine that as well. If I'm slow at this time, I'll try to make it fast. Yeah, now it took a little bit longer. It took me 400 milliseconds, which is still quite surprising. I wasn't, was I slow? No, I guess no. So I would say we should think about prefetching critical data, optimize the most important paths, and think when to start prefetching. I was prefetching here on hover, but sometimes when you, for example, have a tabs interface, maybe you can check through the data that they often go to the second tab. It might be users go to the second tab. It might be indicator that the second tab should be the first because they are actually looking for that. But maybe we could start prefetching data when they arrive to the first tab, and when they go to the second, it's already there. And of course, you will overfetch, but I think that's fine. And this prefetch was on hover. And again, like a real life example for the endpoint that we do it, for the query. So even with my fast attempt of 400 milliseconds, we see that people that are as fast as me, they would already have the data loaded. 90% of people would already have that loaded. And for the other people, they will wait, of course, a little bit less time. So this prefetch example uses cache. And I tried really hard, to not introduce to not tell you what cache you should use. Should it be warp drive or Apollo or something? So I did the most simple cache ever. I am just caching the data based on URL. And if I found it, I just return it. Don't do it, of course. But the whole idea here is, and here again, probably it could be done on just a single task, but just I wanted to show you the idea. Let's maybe start from the bottom. I'm on the director page, and I'm waiting for the cache to warm. So when I'm hovering, I'm warming the cache. So I'm actually making a request for a director. And when I go to the director page, I wait for that cache to finish. So the task is finishing, and then I fire the task again, but it's cached already. So I get that in kind of no time. That's the whole trick, not something huge, I would say. And I know every time I practiced, that was over 30 minutes. So I wanted to say, if I had an hour, we would go into caching and fetching policies, which is also quite important, like a soft, let's say soft cache or hard cache invalidation, or background reloading, which is interesting, very interesting because it's tricky for the UI. I wouldn't, for example, recommend it on the lists. You show the users the list, but then suddenly things are shifting, and that might be a little bit unexpected. So we would go through that as well. Global error handler, how to handle common server errors, report about the errors to our error tracker, what to maybe dismiss. And this is a big one. If you work with microservices, have a decent servers, add the request layer to for retry of errors in a family of 500. I'm thinking about 502 especially, and so on. Lack of internet connection, we definitely can handle that. Optimistic UI, what it means to fetch data from the components and avoid maybe avoid using services for that, which is also controversial, but one controversy is enough for a talk. So yeah, if at any time you thought that I spent a lot of time working on this application, then thank you for noticing. And thank you for being part of Ember community. Thank you.